coffee with each other, talked for hours on the phone, and even rented a cottage together on Lake Huron. Remember that?
Yes.
Those were fun times. After newcomers, couples decided, where are we going to go now? What are we going to do? Because nobody wanted to go home yet. As you remember, we were young, and it was our first time away from our homes. We had new homes. Most times we went to someone's home to talk, dance, play Trivial Pursuit, and often we returned home at 4 a.m., babies in tow. I remember one New Year's Eve, some friends of ours received a bottle of champagne and a bottle of Southern Comfort. Those of you who know, that is a wonderful combination. Smooth, and you don't realize how much you're drinking. Anyway, the couple had wooden floors, and we amused ourselves by sliding down the hall, which had become somehow wet and slippery. It was hard when Norine and Bud moved to Ohio, but we never lost contact and talked often. When next we met, it was in Birmingham, Michigan, soon after Margaret was born, probably 2 weeks after we were born. Let's see, Kathy was about 3 and Tammy was about 6. We were invited, she invited 3 couples down there to have dinner, and Norine baked 2 pies. We never could figure out why she would bake 2 pies 2 weeks after Margaret's appearance. We were all amazed. We left around 2 a.m. and all still talked about the long and very fast trip back to Saginaw. Fast forward to Massachusetts, where Bill and I visited Medfield, Milton, and several other places. Soon after her divorce, I flew to Boston to help her move from her 25-room home to a 2-bedroom condo. And Norine didn't want to get rid of anything. Ratty towels, trinkets, just anything. So I said, okay, this room over here is going to be the Salvation Army room. And we all just threw stuff in there, items, all kinds of things. It was pretty funny. And 2 other things about that was that I said to her, okay, this is a really hard time, but we're going to do something fun every day so that we can get through this. And another thing was, she sent me to the store to get grinders and sodas. And I had no idea what a grinder was or a soda.
Those are sub sandwiches.
We also met on Cape Cod in Florida for Margaret's wedding in Gloucester, and several times in Bloomington, Indiana, where I now live. In fact, Wayne and Norine visited us in July. For our 50 birthdays, we decided we'd go someplace special. So she took me to St. Martin's, and I took her to St. Martin's because we couldn't afford it. And our 60th birthday, we met Norine and Wayne in Hawaii and had a wonderful time. I have to tell you about a story, something that happened in St. Martin's. I remember it was an evening and the stars were out and there were bongo drums going, and we were standing in line getting ready to eat. And I'm looking around and I'm paying attention to what's going on out there and not knowing what's going on with Norine. Norine, evidently someone else in line whispered to Norine, "Who's that with you?" And he said, "I think I recognize her." And she said, "I can't tell you." And he said, "Was she on television? Is she on television?" And Norine said, "Yes, but I can't say anything more. We just by ourselves and not let anybody know that she's here." Well, I didn't know what was going on, except everybody down the line was pointing at me and whispering and laughing, and it wasn't until later that she told me what she had done. Laughing all the time, and then later, every time she repeated the story, she would just die laughing. It was so funny. Norine has been a friend of mine for 76 years, and I will miss her desperately. She is loyal. She is beautiful. And one other thing that she has done for us, she has modeled how to go through our last stage of life. And for that, and for all of you, in particular for her family, I thank you all.
Thank you, Gail. Great story. I'd like to ask Dr. Marcia Adwell to come up. A mentor, a colleague in private practice, state of Virginia. Dr. Adwell.
I'm honored to have been asked to speak briefly today about my mentor, colleague, and friend of almost 30 years. I met Norine in 1983 at the then Kennedy Memorial Hospital when she hired me for my first job as a psychologist. For 4 years at the hospital, I observed her masterful direction of the psychology department within a rather challenging environment. In 1984, she brought me into her private practice, where we worked side by side and often in collaboration, joined by numerous other colleagues over the next 27 years. While there are many thoughts, memories, images swirling around in my head, I would like to take this opportunity today to express my admiration for and appreciation of Norine. First, my tremendous respect for her clinical work. Norine was a beloved and highly sought-out psychologist on the South Shore who touched the lives of many people. She was a dedicated and astute clinician, always compassionate and understanding, insightful and practical, forthright and direct. She had an unparalleled presence and sense of professionalism, and a keen ability to zero in on key problems and build on strengths. And from the voices of those with whom she worked comes overwhelming admiration and gratitude for her unrelenting caring and commitment, and for her unique blend of empathy, introspection, guidance, empowerment, and her ability to confront the tough issues in a gentle yet supportive way. I also want to express my gratitude to Norine for her mentorship over the years, for her wisdom, her warmth and generosity, her energy and strength, her consistency and availability, her poise and elegance. She was my go-to person for advice and consultation, and she was the quintessential role model. So, to Norine, you will be deeply missed, but remain in my heart the spirit of my work and in my identity as a psychologist. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Dr. Dorothy Cantor, a very close friend from the Women to Women's Group.
Many of you have seen the sign on the front door of Norine's house, the one that reads, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." But you probably don't know how she came to have it. Several years ago, a group of 7 women psychologists, known collectively as Women to Women, or W2W, took a trip to Seneca Falls, New York, to visit the site of the first women's rights convention in 1848. We were all moved by the power and courage of the group that assembled there and identified completely with their mission and their zeal. W2W has existed for about 16 years. We were a group of individual psychologists who knew and respected each other and had our own friendships with each other. But when we sat at the rear of a lecture hall at a conference, talking with each other a bit too loudly, I suspect, we were politely asked to either shush or leave. We chose to leave because the lecture was boring. We sat outside on a beautiful Florida day, and someone observed that we were quite a group of women seated around the table. Every one of us had been president of something, or several somethings, within APA. We chatted for hours and decided that we had so enjoyed each other's company that we needed to get together and continue the conversation. I should note here that the other women in the group, alphabetically of course, are Carol Goodhart, Sandy Haber, Alice Rubenstein, Lenore Walker, and Karen Zager. We feel like sisters to each other. We were all overachievers, such overachievers that we couldn't allow ourselves to just get together to have fun. We had to have a project. After a few meetings, we decided to write a book together. Interestingly, Norine declined. She had her own writing ambitions, and she didn't relish the idea of that particular collective effort. But she didn't want to be dropped from the group. So we found a way to have her continue with us. And while the rest of us wrote Finding Your Voice, Norine began research to write An American Family Myth, a fictional version of her much admired grandmother's life. How thrilled she was when it was published last year. And if you haven't read it yet, it's a wonderful read. W2W gets together twice a year for a long weekend. We generally find an interesting destination once a year and go to someone's house for the other meeting. That's how we came to visit Seneca Falls. But one of our favorite trips will always be our visit to the Kentucky Derby in 2008. There's a picture of us in the hall at that event. Norine was a Kentucky colonel. Who even knew there was such a thing? Because some ancestor had crossed the Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone.
That's right.
We all brought appropriate or semi-appropriate hats for the occasion and played the experience to the hilt. Because of Norine's status, we were able to be at the clubhouse of Churchill Downs for lunch, the races that preceded the Derby, and the hat contest, which Sandy actually entered. I should add that we stayed in a nearby town and took a trolley tour the morning before the Derby. The last stop on the tour was a bourbon museum, where we got to taste bourbon before noon. Such decadence. After the book was written, and we had matured some, we decided that we could continue to get together even if we didn't take on a communal project. We traveled to Asheville, Charleston, Savannah, Salem, and Longwood Gardens, among other places. We stay in a B&B, preferably one where we can take over the whole place. That became even more important in recent years as we took on a new activity, mahjong. Yes, Norine learned mahjong, although nothing in her family history had ever hinted that she'd learned got together, whereas some of us got hooked enough to arrange regular games at home. It might take a few hands to get the gestalt again, but when she did, she was a formidable opponent, and she loved to win. Did I mention that this is a competitive group? But at the same time, as supportive a group as you would ever find anywhere. Norine shyly asked us a few years ago if she could read an excerpt from the book she was writing. We all said yes, and then we were blown away by what we heard. First, we heard segments of An American Family Myth, and then essays from the collection she was writing about her beloved father. We came to look forward to the times that she would read to us and be disappointed if she didn't have a new story for us. Norine gave us many gifts as members of W2W, but I dare say the most incredible was the opportunity to spend time with her the weekend before she died. 4 of us were able to get to Boston on fairly short notice, and the other 2 were able to be with her via speakerphone. We knew she was failing, but we didn't know quite what to expect when we got there. On Saturday, Norine wanted to see each of us individually. She was in pain, but being soothed by her fabulous daughters. She couldn't speak a lot, but she asked each of us to tell our stories to her girls. In doing so, she'd be telling us what she loved and admired in each of us. She listened to every word and would follow our comments with thoughtful follow-ups. Her sense of humor was intact. At one point, when one of us, who shall remain nameless, was on the phone and kept talking over her, Norine turned to her girls and said, "You can never get a word in with her." Everyone downstairs also heard the roar of laughter from her bedside when I was leaving, and her parting comment to her daughters was, "Just remember, I was a better APA president." To the end, she was concerned about whether she had been fair to all of us. Had we spent equal time? Had she covered everything she wanted to? On Sunday, when she had enough strength to put on lipstick and meet with all of us together, she didn't want us to leave. We told her that some of us would come back the following week. She said, but I probably won't be. She asked me to speak first for W2W. She didn't say why, but I teased her with a wink that it was because I was now the oldest. Norine kept her age a semi-secret. Even in her autobiography and a collection of stories of eminent women in psychology, her birthday is listed as NA. I don't know how she'd feel about that date on the cover of her journal. And do you know, if you Google her, the first reference to Norine that comes up includes her birthday. I am actually very proud to be the spokesperson for W2W, a group that is even closer thanks to the gift of saying goodbye to Norine together. She will be with us in spirit whenever we assemble. We will drink a toast to her. We will tell stories about her as she told us her stories, and we will miss her terribly.
I'd like to ask Dr. Gerald Sucher to say a few words.
Dorothy, we put in her birthday as a gift to you.
How does one say goodbye to a colleague, friend, and co-conspirator of more than 40 years? You don't say goodbye, you say thank you, and you remember. I first met Norine in the mid-1970s. We both worked at children's hospitals in Boston. She at Kennedy Memorial and I over at Children's. My wife was a social worker at Kennedy Memorial, and I can testify to the fact that Norine accomplished remarkable things working under the auspices of some obsessive-compulsive nuns and at least one manic-depressive neurologist. served together on the board of directors of the Massachusetts Psychological Association, where she followed me as president beginning in 1981. In the middle of her 2-year term, she began treatment for breast cancer. With her prototypical energy, problem-solving skills, and resilience in place, Norine moved ahead. I don't recall her ever missing a meeting. We both became engaged in national affairs and served together in the governance of the American Psychological Association. We had an affinity for breaking down barriers, and whenever someone said, "Here's the way we do it here," or "You can't do it that way," we'd look each other in the eye, and Norine's evil twin, Norine Bad Johnson, and we'd set out to prove them wrong. We usually succeeded, although Norine was inevitably much more polite in making it happen. Throughout these years of collaboration, I often heard stories about the exploits of Catherine, Camry, and Margaret, particularly their athletic competitions. And I met Wayne. Family life was critically important to Norine, as we've heard over and over again, although Wayne helped make a lot of it possible, as I know from our frequent meeting in Roach Brothers, who did shopping in the family. I had the honor of serving on the board of directors of APA during her year as the 9th woman president of the American Psychological Association in 2001. The year began with her successful effort to add the word health to the prime mission statement of APA, to advance psychology as a science, profession, and a means of promoting human health and welfare. She focused on the theme of building a healthy world, breaking down barriers and building bridges. She also proved quite successful in bringing the political establishment on board too, moving in the direction of integrating health and mental health care in national health policy, dragging in Senators Kennedy, Kerry, and several members of the Massachusetts congressional delegation, although I think Wayne had something to do with helping. Sadly, in September of that year, she was forced to turn her attention to directing APA's energies to helping assist America during the dark days that followed the attacks on America by terrorist forces. Following her presidency, Norine continued her active engagement in professional affairs, working as a representative to the APA Insurance Trust, the American Psychological Foundation, and working very diligently in the Division of Psychotherapy. We began to feel a keen loss as her recurrent illness forced a withdrawal from professional affairs. I was very moved today by Morgan's playing that tune. I know her grandmother would have been enormously proud of her getting up after 2 weeks practice to play that. I was also struck by those of you who may know Schiller's words to the Ode to Joy. One of the phrases that comes up over and over again in the chorus is "Deine Zauberin Lieder," which means your magic brings us together. And indeed, your grandmother did that. Norine, your friends continue to hold you in our hearts as a beacon of strength, resilience, integrity, innovation, and caring. We treasure your memory and thank your family for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Dr. Goode. This may surprise you, but another doctor is going to come up and say something. We're very close to being able to write this off as a mention. Dr. Alice.
We're very close to be able to write this off.
Norine would have loved being here today. I'm here to say only a few words, but to deliver many. And let me explain. Over the years, my unofficial role in W2W has evolved into what many would call the W2W archivist. Most of our records consist of photographs of the wonderful gatherings we shared with Norine over more than a decade. In sharing the news of Norine's passing with the governance and many divisions of the APA, we were immediately flooded with emails from across the country. They spoke of their sadness, loss, and the many, many ways Norine touched their lives, both personally and professionally. It became immediately clear to me, as the unofficial WTW archivist, it would be my job, and more so my honor, to compile these electronic messages into a printed collection. It is the hope of all of us in WTW that this collection will become part of the archives of your wonderful mother, wife, and grandmother. We will all miss her. We will miss her smile, her laughter, the time she took to play a mahjong hand, and her reading to us, which was never, ever, ever boring and always enriching. So I have here 2 gifts. Go ahead to the same gift. Margaret, for you and your sisters to share. There are many, many messages from all over the country to your mom. Wayne?
Thank you, Alice. A lot of stories, a lot of friends. Last but not least, I'd like to invite Norine's best friend and husband.
Maya, when you said who was Grandmom's best friend, what I was going to say is Paul Wayne.
My thanks to all of you for being here, and my special thanks to Alice for such a beautiful gift to continue to remember Norine by, as I will do for the rest of my life. I love Norine Johnson, and I see her every day. I see her in the bright sunshine that pours through our bedroom window and lights up the place where she slept. I see her in the garden that she tended so lovingly in our backyard. I see her in the ripples on Jamaica Pond, where we often walk. I see her in the squirrels that we virtually raised after they were born in the eaves under my offices. We would marvel at them as they grew up. Even when they started competing with birds for food in our backyard bird feeder. One of them even found a way to get inside the bird feeder. And after I once gingerly expelled that squirrel, I lifted the lid very gingerly and to free him, and he got out. But then he developed a pretty clever trick. Learning how to get into it, he would leave enough of the lid ajar so that he could push his own way out. Great squirrels. I also see Norine in the dunes of Plum Island, in the beach and sands of Siesta Key in Sarasota, where we spent time in the winter. I see her at Martha's Vineyard, in the joy of Martha's Vineyard, where we assemble daughters, sons-in-law, and beautiful grandchildren every summer to beach, hike, swim, and just plain love each other. I see her and her daughters, who, with her love and tutelage, have become accomplished women in law, business, and psychology. And all the while, showering their children with the same kind of love and purpose building that Norine gave me. And oh, how I see her in those grandchildren. In the way that the cousins love each other as if they were brothers and sisters. And the horseplay that they engage in. Story for another day. And that is when they're all together. They just do a lot of playing together, teasing, etc. And that gave so much glee to Norine. Just, well, a lot of you know her laugh, so you've heard it, or we heard it on those occasions. We also would take the grandchildren on, on what Norine dubbed Grandma's Camp, which was school break adventures, which ranged from a day at the Canopy Lake amusement park to a walk with our granddaughters to show them the historic women statues along Commonwealth Avenue. I see her in the feminist sticker with the motto that Dorothy Cantor talked about earlier on our front door, which reads, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." Well, she certainly was not well-behaved when she found discrimination and abuse of children at a hospital where she once worked, and when money was ill spent by the old guard in APA. She took on nurses at that hospital where she was director of psychology, and some of those nurses were locking up or beating children. And she would not be shut up by those who tried to silence her during one heated exchange at APA's governing council. And she carried the day on that day. I see her in the women that she has befriended and influenced in her professional life. You've heard from some of them today, and I would like to briefly share excerpts from 2 cards I received upon Norine's passing from younger psychologists. Holly Sweet wrote, "She is the main reason I got my licensing once I got my PhD. She heard that I was going to quit, and she said, 'Why not go the whole way? You put too much time into this.'" And Ms. Sweet wrote, "I will never forget those words." Linda Forrest, another young psychologist, wrote, "She helped many of she helped many of us dream bigger dreams." What a gift that is. And I'll never forget the time that Norine and I went to an Alaska Psychology Association dinner to fulfill a campaign pledge the year she was elected president of APA. And it was to revisit every state where she had campaigned and reap support, no matter how far it was from Boston. While we were there, a psychologist who loved to fly invited us to join him in his little 3-seater for a jaunt over the Alaskan landscape. We saw lots of beautiful ice and snow, an occasional moose gallop, and then our pilot said casually, "Look out the window." We did, and we saw a beautiful bald eagle flying right along with the plane, only feet away from us. We were awed, and that's how I see the love of my life now. Up there in the sky, soaring with the eagles. Thank you all.
Well, that concludes the service today. I would ask that everyone wait until the family and the first front rows leave to head to the Bigelow.
I thought the band was going to play just a closer walk.